Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our Jane community event. This is really, really exciting for us. We work virtually, so to have everyone in this room, we can actually touch you. You're so close. There's no screen between us today, so we're very excited to be here. We're excited to share information about intake forms. We are admin nerds. We love this stuff, and we have so many tips and tricks for you tonight, and we hope that it'll make a difference in your daily practice here. So my name's Vanessa. I am the Ginger Systems Manager. I live in Victoria, BC with my wife and my giant dog, Sully. My love for Jane goes way back. I started working with Jane in 2013, and I attended their summer school, I believe it was in 2021, where I learned about Ginger Desk and fell in love with the company and with Julie and her philosophy. And it's been, I guess, a love story since then. Yeah. So thank you, Jane, for introducing me to Ginger Desk. And this is Joelle.
Yes, I'm Joelle. I'm from Monty Creek, just outside of Kamloops, BC. I'm so happy to be in Vancouver with all of you. I started working with Ginger Desk about a year and a half ago. I found Ginger Desk online after finding a blog post that Dr. Julie, our CEO and founder, wrote that said she built her business in the forest, and I had to work with her. So also a love story from the beginning. I also love Jane. I love what I do, and I'm so happy to talk to you guys today, and I truly hope it makes a difference.
Yeah, so we're excited to be here, obviously. But what we're bringing to you, it's going to be more snippets of our stories, our time here with Ginger Desk, and also in our clinic time in the past. We're not going to teach you how to build an intake form. Jane has amazing workshops and videos and how-to guides. So seek those out, speak to the lovely folks in the corner. But we're going to bring some of our best practices to you, our tried and tested best practices.
We're going to read a little bit off a presentation just to make sure you guys get everything you need to know.
So we want to share what we love about intake forms. We want to share our experience of what we've recognized is when the humble intake form is ignored, it has a ripple effect in your practice. It can affect your accounts receivables. It can affect your patient experience and your admin efficiencies. It can affect so many different things. So we're hoping today will inspire you to make some simple changes that will make that ripple effect positive. And yeah, some efficiencies. We're all about efficiencies.
Yeah.
Now I realize we're talking a lot about Ginger Desk, and many of you may not know what that is, who we are. So if you haven't heard of us before, we're a team of virtual assistants. We do front desk and admin support for healthcare providers. In addition to that, we have a separate department called Ginger Systems that Joelle and I spearhead, and we help health practitioners optimize and also set up their Jane accounts. We are so excited to officially announce our partnership with Jane. Yeah. We can now help even more of you, help more patients, and also achieve admin freedom. That's our goal.
Okay, to get us started, we're going to talk about why we love intake forms. We're all about efficiency at Ginger Desk, so we love a good time saver, and Jane's intake forms do just that for you, your team, and your patients. Jane auto-populates all of the patient demographics, insurance policies, credit card information, so you don't have to enter anything manually or have your team chase down information due to incomplete profiles. The patient completes the form prior to arrival, so you have more time to focus on treatment and care in your session. And the patients can complete it whenever they have time. No need to arrive extra early for their appointments. If you run an in-person clinic, you may know that there's often a cluster at the front desk where people are trying to check out, finish their forms, and it just creates a backlog and not a smooth process. So Jane automates reminders 24 hours before their upcoming appointments. So they will automatically get a reminder if their intake form isn't complete, which is so wonderful. Jane does that for us. So thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane, from the admin team. No phone call reminders necessary.
Yeah. Intake forms are also private and secure. So with online intake forms, there's no papers to store, no papers to lose or misplace. Access requires passwords, and two-factor authentication is also now available. Somebody's playing a song. This makes patients feel safe and secure with their information online and securely encrypted. It can also improve your professionalism. Often an intake form is a patient's first chance to hear your voice, your tone, and your approach to healthcare. They may have spoken to a front desk person, but they haven't heard from you yet. So that's their first point of contact to hear your tone and voice. These forms can help to introduce professional boundaries and outline expectations as well. So your patients are prepared when they come in. And you will also be more prepared. You'll know when you need to put a pregnancy pillow on a massage table, or if your new acupuncture client is afraid of needles, or if there's any other contraindictions you need to talk about in your appointment. And we love the aspects of the intake, what intake forms can do for your team, but these are our tried and tested best practices to make your intake forms work harder for you. So, how many of you have built an intake form already in Jane? Love it. Love to see it. Has anybody had an admin member do it for them? Yeah, girl. And is anybody brand new to this? Brand new to Jane or brand new to practice? Welcome. That's so wonderful. Okay, so I'm still going to talk about the basics. Some of you may know this already, but we're going to go through it regardless. So we want to touch briefly on the sections for customizations and our foundational must-haves. We'll go through these more in depth later. So these are just some points to consider as we move through our presentation. In the general tab, it's important to have a good name for your forms. So we want something that makes sense to your patient and stands out in their inbox. Keep it simple and straightforward. For appointment types, it's important to have the foundations of your treatment options already initiated before you start your intake form. So you can connect them, and that will come into play later when we're talking about the automations. Under the profile fields, consider what necessary information you're asking for. So if you're a naturopath, you may need to have a personal health number on file. If you order any Life Labs testing, that's how they track their patient requisitions. So it's a necessary part of ordering labs. If it's necessary, make it a required profile field. Then your patients have to fill it out before they move past on the intake form. For credit cards, you'll only see this option if you're using Jane Payments. Later, we'll discuss with you the importance of this step and how it can benefit you. And then insurance information. Collecting this information in the intake form is so valuable. Often when we take it over the phone, we can misinterpret or mishear the numbers or letters. And if you take the information on the intake form, it can reduce clerical error greatly. Moving on to questionnaires, we create ease in your questionnaires by using checkboxes, drop downs, or sliding scales that can help your patient navigate a lengthy form with more ease. We see that they're more likely to complete their forms if it's more engaging with interactive fields. And then finally, consents. So this is arguably the most important part of an intake form, but it's also the most dry. So we're not going to talk too much about consents yet. We'll get to that later, and we'll move on. Okay, so we love to enhance and optimize. Jane is preset with default language that's highly functional, but also gives you the opportunity to completely customize to reflect your brand and tone. Jane delivers you a solid foundation, but this is where optimization comes into play. Is a basic form enough to ensure the patient is informed and you're prepared to see them? We recommend using one robust form for your whole team, and there's some reasons why. When you communicate your clinic policies, you can have a consistent plan that's clinic-wide and communicated clearly. You briefly outline the patient journey, answer questions like what they're responsible for, what you're responsible for, what they can expect during, before, or after a session. And what your cancellation policy is, fee schedule, or a third-party billing agreement. By setting up your expectations, you're likelier to initiate a patient relationship from the get-go. And then for consistency in language and tone across all forms, when you show up with a consistent language, your patients know what to expect from you, and this helps to build trust. So we see this in multidisciplinary clinics where you have multiple staff members and they've all created their own form. One may be very robotic, the other one is pretty casual with slang in it, and the other one is warm and welcoming. When you use a cohesive form, it builds team cohesion, so they know what to expect from your clinic in general. We've supported clinics as well where practitioners had a separate form for each practitioner, and patients complained that they had to keep filling out the same information again and again and again. So we can mitigate that by creating one robust form with all the information that maybe all practitioners will need, all the basics. And then, speaking to that, while we do recommend using one robust form, it can be really practical to have some specialty forms on hand for when you need them. So maybe you need to ask some more specific questions based on the treatment type. For an example, a pediatric appointment, you may need to ask more about their birth experience, early feeding habits, or get parental consent instead of patient consent. And then another example is couples counseling. So you may be looking for more information on the relationship dynamic rather than information about the individual. You may also need them to sign a couples consent so that they're consenting to sharing information with each other. You also maybe have recently added direct billing insurance to your practice, so you can send a form that is only asking for the insurance information. It's not going to ask them all of the health history questions again, and then you can just collect their insurance and get started with your direct billing. And then my personal favorite one is a credit card authorization form. So that just asks for credit card information, which means if your patients get a new card or if they want to use a different card for their visits, you can just send them a form that's only asking for their credit card information, and you have it securely and safely stored in Jane's servers.
So how do we make Jane work harder with all of this? This is a lot of wonderful things, but Jane can be like another staff member. How can we get Jane to work harder? So starting with automations. This is one of my favorite things. I love the automations in Jane. So if you don't know what automations are, they are what triggers the forms. These items here, appointments, discipline, staff member, and treatments, they trigger the forms to be sent to your patients when a specific appointment type is booked. You can coordinate it in different ways. You can do all appointments. You could use disciplines. This is really helpful when a consent form is needed for an entire discipline category. So maybe another multidisciplinary clinic I have in mind, an acupuncture appointment's booked commonly, and this patient now wants to try massage therapy. They've booked the massage therapy appointment. Jane automatically sends the consents that are required for massage therapy. You don't have to do anything. Your admin team doesn't have to lift a finger. Jane does it all. Another option would be staff members, and same thing. If you have a particular form you need for a staff member, maybe a fee schedule or a specific informed consent. We see that commonly in mental health practices. As soon as someone books in an appointment with that staff member, Jane sends the corresponding forms. Our favorite one that we like to use the most is the last one, the specific treatments. We find that is the most useful one, and we can pinpoint, get kind of more granular with this option. So we often use it for initial appointments, ICBC, work safe, couples counseling, children or youth. Many of those types of appointments need specific forms, and you can direct them with the specific appointment types. Ultimately, using the automation in forms ultimately ensures that the patients, when they book their appointment, they get the appropriate forms. And there's no chasing down and manually sending. Jane does all the work. I love it. It's my favorite thing. The other way we can get Jane to work for us is requiring a credit card. So this piece, I guess, is like my second favorite, maybe my second favorite thing. If you can't tell, we really love admin things. So this is what excites us. Requiring it in your intake form, you may say, but I already require it for online booking. There's a good chance that someone might call in and book over the phone. or request something through an email and you book them in and you might not think on the phone to collect that information. This is a secondary step to help ensure that information's on file. And Jane's really smart. She's not going to ask it again and again and again. Once it's on file, she'll know that it's already complete. So it won't be harassing your patients. And collecting the credit card information is available when you have Jane Payments. When you activate that integration, it's one of our favorite things too. We love Jane Payments. We think it's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
It saves so much time and increases compliance massively. So I'm curious, do any of you use Jane Payments already? Quite a few. Wonderful, wonderful. So with that integration, speaking of the time piece, we no longer have to leave Jane, process the payment, come back to Jane, update the appointment in the billing, make sure everything is correct and accurate. If it's not accurate, we don't have to then go looking through receipts and looking through reports and spending so much time on ARs digging around for things. Jane automatically does it all. It saves so much of your admin time and admin load. In the past, this is my personal experience working at a front desk, I had someone swear that they made a payment with their debit card at the front desk using our POS payment system. Couldn't find proof of it anywhere. And I had to spend so much time digging through receipts, running reports, and managing this upset patient. And that can be avoided with integrations like Jane Payments. And it happened often enough that it made me think like external payment processors sometimes have lower fees. That's true. But when you account for the additional time, admin time, would an internal integration actually save you money in the end? And with all of our clients at GingerDesk, we've kind of run some numbers and did a bit of research and digging around, and we actually found that it significantly reduces the admin cost when we use an integration like Jane Payments. So that's my love for Jane Payments. The other piece for collecting your credit card information in an intake form, we see significantly smaller accounts receivables. It directly is reflected in your ARs to the point that week to week, month to month, it's at zero. And I know that can be like a dream goal for some people, but it's possible when you streamline systems, like having your intake form collect credit cards. No-shows as well. At GingerDesk, we see far fewer no-shows when we have a practice that's using an integration. People put their credit card on file and it's like committing to that appointment, committing to you and your care, far less. And when they do happen, we're able to collect payment much easier. The other piece here, it's getting to be pretty standard to include a credit card on file. I think most people expect it. You might catch people off guard once in a while. One of our last slides is to deal with those people who are afraid of putting their stuff on the internet. So we'll deal with that too. But for the most part, people are comfortable with it because it's safe in Jane, the way it's been set up with the integration. It's different than typing it into a note on file. It's encrypted and it's safe, and people see that and are generally very comfortable with it.
Yes, patients hate to see their credit card number written on a sticky note at a front desk. They don't like that. We do see you. I see it. They would much rather type it into an encrypted server. So we love using Jane Payments for that. We love collecting credit cards. It's so important and it's so successful when you do that in your intake forms. We love it. Another thing is that insurance details are often lost in translation as well. So let Jane collect this information for you and attach it to your patient's profile automatically. In the insurance info section, you can request policy and certificate information, but often patients put in the wrong information. So has anyone seen like a 1-800 Canada Life in the policy numbers? Yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time. Patients aren't always familiar with what their policy is or what numbers they need to use. So turning on the option to upload a photo of your benefits card is so It's precious. It's beautiful, and one of our favorite features of the intake forms.
Billing with her.
I do a lot of billing, so it's very important, and I love it so much. So it also stops us from getting caught in a game of phone tag where you're trying to contact a patient to track down either their spouse's date of birth because they didn't include that in their form, or correct a certificate or policy number. So it's very helpful. We love if you turn on the option for it. You can make it a requirement as well, but the optional feature is wonderful as well. On the other hand, does anyone work with ICBC or WorkSafe BC?
Anyone in here?
Just like a couple. So if you do, you'll know that they all use different information in their reports. So they're all asking for different things, which aren't necessarily relevant for a typical patient. So we love to create additional forms, attach them to an appointment type where you can ask those questions before your patient even comes in. So examples of that can be your employer, your job status, your date of injury. Those are all things that come up when you have to write a report for WorkSafe or often ICBC as well. Jane will auto send the specific intake forms if they're connected to an appointment type. So we talked about earlier, if you have your treatment system set up well before you initiate your intake forms, you can attach a specific ICBC intake form to an initial ICBC visit. And then you're collecting all the information you need right from the get-go, and you're maybe not asking them all of the other things that you would need for a typical patient. So we've discussed the automated opportunities. We want to talk about the building blocks of an effective intake form. So starting with questionnaires, do your questions set you up for success? The template library is a wonderful way to gain inspiration and save time, but do your questionnaires ask the most valuable and efficient questions? Maybe there's questions you never read the answers to because they're not necessarily relevant. Get rid of them. Simplify and elaborate on the parts that you do need. So do your questions help you prepare your space and your supplies to see the patient? Have you isolated any red flags to care? Do the questions help you determine if you're the right fit for the patient? Those are all things we want you to think about and address in your intake forms.
Okay, we're here. We're talking about the dry stuff. I'll try to make it quick, but it's really important. So again, Jane has so much default language and foundational pieces built in. You can turn it on and use it. But does it cover everything your college requires in those 3 basic pieces? Super helpful, but more questions to consider. Should your consent form outline things like risk of treatment, detailed storage and sharing of private information policy that you might have? What is informed consent for you and how do they withdraw? Those are big things and often required by your college or board, so take the time to go over those. It's important. The last piece here, to try and make it more palatable, perhaps maybe less dry, is Jane's formatting. So you can see on the bottom there's a little snippet. In the content box of your consent forms, you can add bold, italicize, bullets. All of those can make a huge difference. If it's a whole bunch of information and there's some key things you want people to read and to recognize, make them stand out. They're not likely to read realistically. They're probably not going to read every word in 17 paragraphs, but if you have bolded and bulleted pieces, those will stand out and they'll recognize that. The other piece here, I almost missed that piece, is a signature. In many colleges or boards, a checkbox next to I agree is adequate, but we recommend adding that signature box as well. In post-COVID world, a digital signature is just as valid as them signing something in the office. Yeah, hopefully I didn't put anyone to sleep with that. We're okay? Yeah. So we've been through all of the core pieces. We're gonna do questions after, but we'll get to you for sure. So we made it through all of the tabs. We went through the intake form, but we have some special mentions here. So we are going to start with language. So language, Jane has a whole language settings. If you haven't found it in your settings tab, look for it. This is where you can update, again, beautiful default language from Jane, foundational, super helpful, but does it reflect your tone? Does it actually communicate what your patients need and what you need? Have a look through there, but we're going to focus on email prompts and intake form instructions. First one here. So on your left, speaking of the default language, so this is, a basic Jane email. This person hasn't done any branding and colors and logos or updated the language. It could look like another Jane Clinic email when it lands in someone's inbox. Versus the one on the right, we have colors and a logo and some steps to take and information that's important for them, can set them up for success for filling out their intake form. Which one do you think people would open, enact, engage with?
Yeah,
I personally feel like the one on the right.
It's really nice to include instructions in there for sure.
Yeah. And that's the next piece here. In the general tab, in the intake form, if you scroll past the name, past the manual or automation box, there is a content box that you can put in instructions for your form. And this lands at the top of your intake form. So this is the patient perspective. You can tell them, have your insurance information ready. We need your credit card. These are the expectations before you come in. If you don't complete this before your appointment, we're going to have to reschedule. I know that's a policy for some people.
Yeah.
Important to have it up here and right at the top. And again, there's a little bit of formatting. You can bold in there. You can make things stand out if you need to.
We all have those patients who just don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. And so how many of you have heard these phrases before? I forgot to do my intake form. I don't know how to fill out my intake form online. Or I couldn't find my form. Can I fill out a paper copy? So what do? Jane has a beautiful option to fill out these forms for the patient, or you can pass a device to the patient and have them fill it out in the office. So a special note on that is if you pass a device to a patient, Jane will auto log you out. So that patient doesn't have any access to your charts or any private information. You'll have to log back in once you get that device back. Avoiding paper copies means that you don't have to manually type in all of their demographics. Let Jane do it for you. This one's my favorite. Occasionally, we run into an individual who refuses to put a card on file. How do we navigate that with grace while protecting our business? So you know your demographic better than anyone. You can choose to make credit cards optional in your intake forms. That would be a blanket policy for everyone. So that would just mean that no patient has to put their card on file. All of them will be able to bypass that. You can take this one step further by personalizing the billing options for individual patients. So in the patient profile, you can remove the requirement manually for just that patient to ensure that they're comfortable coming to your clinic. So we're always trying to look for ways to remove barriers to care, and these options allow us to make exceptions for individuals while still upholding our professional boundaries. So
that was a lot. That was a lot.
There could be more. Okay. We could talk forever, but
we have a lot in here.
So to summarize, we've shared who we are, why we love intake forms, our best practices, and some special mentions. We hope you can see how valuable intake forms are and what you can do with them, and how you can optimize and personalize with Jane's automations. It comes ready to go, but it's beautiful to make it one step further. It truly is like having another staff member.
Our goal with this presentation is also our ambition with our Ginger Systems department. We want to support health practitioners like you to increase efficiency, to reduce your admin load, and it all comes down to so you can see more patients, you can help more people in our community, but also it benefits you and your business and your prosperity, and that's important too.